Welcome to the Information Technology Program. I'm Mr. Roberson, and this is Mrs. Hula, and we're going to share some information with you today.
We're so very happy that you have chosen to visit our Information Technology Program in this virtual tour. And in our program, we have several classes that you as a student can pick and choose from based on your interest and your career objectives. So what we're going to do is we are going to lead you through some little video clips to kind of explain some of the options that we are currently offering. Please feel free, if you have questions about our program or about anything that we are currently teaching, please feel free to call us or email us here at Autry Tech, or please let us know if you would like to set up an individual visit, and we would be happy for you to come out and visit with us and see the program in person if you would like to do that. This is one of our classrooms in our information technology program, and you can see that as we work in the classrooms, we have computers and workbenches and tables everywhere. Lots and lots of hands-on training is provided for the students in our area. We know that this is one of the quads that the students sit at. You'll notice that this year each of them have a laptop that they can use here at the school, and then they can take that home with them if they need to. They're also connected through a docking station that's shown right here that then connects them to our network for our shared drives, our printers, our multiple monitors that they might need as far as the curriculum is concerned. Then we move to the individual labs where we have all kinds of things that they can practice everything they're learning. The two of the classes that I teach are computer repair and troubleshooting, and that basically teaches the students all the skills that they would need to be an entry-level technician. So we've spent quite a bit of time up to this point with hardware, and we know that when we think about hardware, we think of hardware in the desktop PC, and we think of when we open up the PCs, they each will have one. They'll take it apart, put it back together, troubleshoot those, switch out components. Again, we have our motherboard down here at the bottom. We talk a lot about RAM and the different random access memory options that we have. Our power supply that connects here to convert the alternating current to direct current. Our fan systems, our CPU fan that is going to be seated on top of the actual central processing unit or the brain of the computer. This is an example of an LGA format of that. And then, of course, our drives. We also learn a lot about hardware involved in a mobile environment. So here is an example, is a laptop that we open up to kind of see what the components are. Some are from the top, some are from the bottom. We also work with hardware as far as tablets on into phone are concerned. We learn all the different specs of the individual components. So here is an example. We have a motherboard from a desktop environment versus a motherboard in a laptop environment. We work a lot with cards, learning those cards and the different ports. As an example, here is a video card. See if I can get a better handle on that. Here's a video card that we work with, and again, the different video ports that we have. So we'll learn all about the speeds and everything else, the cables that connect those together. We work a lot with storage devices. We know that we see our traditional hard drives that we have here with the spinning platters. We see our solid state drives here, which are going to both use that SATA connector that we see here with the cable. That is basically, that solid state drive is just going to be a circuit board, and this will connect the drive to one of the controllers on the board. We also learn about the newer M.2 drives, again, where you can just see that's basically just a circuit board, and that's going to plug into your M.2 slot right here. This is an example of a little wireless NIC that we see, of course, more in the mobile world. We learn a lot about, again, RAM. When we thought about the RAM that we looked at inside of there, this is a DIMM that's going to be used in a desktop environment. This is a SODIMM that we would see used more in a mobile world. We work with all the different operating systems. So you can see they each have a computer. They install Windows on them. We install Windows virtually so that we can work with that. We work with Linux and the Android side as we get to the tablets and the phones. We work with iOS interface on the phones and the tablets, and the Mac OS as far as the operating systems are concerned. We deal with printers. You'll see there's lots of printers sitting around. We're just finishing up a printer unit. We work with security. We work with customer service. Everything that you need to pass that CompTIA A+ certification exam to prove to anyone around the world that you have the skills necessary to be an entry-level technician. We also have some fun little hardware that we get to play with along the way. We have the Cosmos and the Vector robots. We have the Sphero Minis and the Bolts. We also have a VR headset in each classroom that we can just experience to make sure that we're comfortable with that with the pieces of hardware. We do a lot with smaller networks over here, so we can see we've got routers. We set up networks. We set up peer-to-peer networks. We set up file and printer sharing, firewall settings, security settings on the routers. So we do all of that focus more on a SOHO environment, a small office, home office environment.
Hello, it's Mr. Roberson, and I'm going to talk to you about some of the classes I offer through Autry Technology Center. The first few classes I'm going to talk about are from the Cisco Networking Academy, Cisco Certified Network Associate classes. The first class we're going to take in that is the Introduction to Networks. So that'll give you a basic knowledge of all networks, starting with your home network all the way up to enterprise networks. So you'll know how to configure your home network. You know how to configure a medium-sized office up to data center settings. And then we'll move on to switching, routing, and wireless essentials is the second class I'll be teaching. And that'll be teaching you about all the basic switching and routing you need to know, such as if we need to set up VLAN so that one department can talk to the other department or not talk to the other department. So if you didn't want your accounting department to be able to talk to your HR department on the data side, it wouldn't be able to talk to each other. Then you could set it up to where it can talk to each other. And then there's a small wireless component where we go over how we set up wireless routers, how we set up wireless controllers, all that fun stuff. Then we get into enterprise networking, security, and automation. So that's where we're going to get into the meat of routing and how the internet works, how we connect to the internet, how we can block certain networks from accessing our router, and we can allow certain certain routers to get in, or routers or networks to get into our router. And that'll all be a fun course, and it has a little bit of automation in it. So if you're interested a little bit in programming, you'll have a little bit of programming to get your feet wet in it. And then we do offer a capstone course in that, so you can study to get your CCNA certification exam, which is a good exam to get for employers to see that you know what you're talking about when it comes to switching and routing. And here's just a basic packet tracer, like a simulation of what we do. See how it has router 1, router 2, router 3, router 4, and it has switch 1, switch 2, switch 3, and switch 4, and it has an access point and a laptop. It's because you can work on this stuff at home, and you'll be in a simulated environment, and we don't have to give you expensive thousands of dollars worth of equipment. You can work on it at home from a safe environment. It's because, as you know, with the COVID situation, we have to learn to work from home, and we don't have a bunch of equipment to give out. We don't want to be sending routers home with you. So this is one way that we can offer the class without having to spend thousands upon thousands of dollars. And that's just a brief overview of the CCNA class, or the Cisco Networking Academy. And this is one of the labs I have set up for demonstration purposes, so I can show people how I actually have this router and this router set up as a virtual router. So when this router tries to ping it, that one of the routers will be the active router, so it shares an IP address, but we can get into that if you take the class. And there's 2 switches here. These are kind of older model of switches and older model of routers, but they still work, so that's why I'm using them. All the newer stuff is going to be out at the lab stations for y'all to work on when you're here. Then I'm going to start going over our cybersecurity class now. This is the rack that we have with all our cybersecurity equipment in it, and I'm just going to go through a couple of pictures. There's a cool picture with a rack of a switch and a virtual machine with hard drives, a server. Then all the different, you have cameras, security system, door entries, all that good stuff. Panels, alarm panels. So cybersecurity is a good class because it teaches you all the basics of cybersecurity, and a lot of employers will want you to have a cybersecurity knowledge. A lot of good jobs are out in the cybersecurity field. So that's going to be one of the funner classes that you'll get to take. Then there's I teach 2 server classes. One of them is you're going to learn a bunch about Active Directory and how to add users to the domain and what a domain is. And the other one's going to be like when you're learning about cloud computing and virtualization. So that's going to be an exciting class about, hey, I want 15 computers all in this one server, and you have one server and it has the virtual machines inside of them. So that's a pretty fun class. It's similar to VMware, if you ever heard of VMware, but it's called Hyper-V.
Security is a very important part of our information technology program. We hear all the time of breaches and things that have occurred that compromise data and equipment, sensitive information. So it's very important that you know how to protect the devices, the physical facility, and the network from these type of attacks. We have 2 classes currently in our program. One of them is where we teach the foundations of how to do each of those things. And then we have a second class where we use kind of to reinforce and apply those in real life scenarios. We do training and compete in the Cyber Patriot competition, and that's basically where we are working with virtual installs of Linux, Windows, and server, and we are given those at each rounds of the competition with security flaws in them. So the students are tasked with seeing how they can secure those systems and fix those problems, and it's done kind of in a competitive nature. So it gives us real world scenarios with the competition, which makes it really fun as we're learning. This shows a couple of our teams from last year that performed very well throughout the semester. Interface design is a class that's designed to provide an introduction to the basic concepts of programming. And we are programming in this class using a program by Google called Android Studio. And we are basically creating apps in the Android environment. So the software enables us to go in and create the actual screens or the activities. And then we use the Java code to tell the app what to do with the information that we put on the layout files. And so it gives us an introduction to the statements that we see in Java. We know there's many other programming languages out there as well, but this kind of teaches us the logical flow of that. We'll look at some other things in some other areas, but this one in particular is coding using the Java programming. In this particular software package, we start with what they call layout files, and it's where you basically create the screens of the app that you're going to interface with. So in this particular one, it's basically figuring car payments depending on a 3, 4, or 5 year payment period. So we basically went in and we created, we've got some different kinds of widgets that we have on here. This is a text view widget, which is basically just a title. These are going to be user input fields. So these are what we call number fields, and it's basically going to enable our users to input information then that the app is going to take and code to do something else with. So, and then this little button here, we activate that within Java code and tell it that once they click that, what to do. And then this, of course, is just an image that's going to show. We've created 2 particular layout files for this one app. And we come into here, basically we're going to have a title. The information that's going to appear in this particular item is going to be figured by the Java code and the formulas. And then also the image that's going to be shown here is going to depend on if they have chosen a 3, a 4, or a 5 year loan period. So in this particular one, this is where we go in and we do the Java. So we learn all about instantiating classes, defining variables, variable types. We basically start this, and then it starts with what we call a non-click listener. And so basically we get all of our variables set and our classes instantiated, and then we come in and we begin to tell it what to happen once they click that button. So once they click that car payment button, then we begin coding. So here again, we're parsing some information, and then we're passing it over to the payment. And on the payment again, this is where we're kind of setting up what to happen once they put that information in there. There's a lot of coding that's going into here, some formulas that's going to take place so that it knows and gets that figured exactly right. And then they've got an if statement included in here. So if the interest years is going to be 3, then it's going to define the image that's shown. If it's 4, it's going to define the image. And if it's 5, it's going to define the image. If they choose a period that's not 3, 4, or 5 years, it's going to give them a message to do that. Once we run that in what we call an emulator, which enables us to test it. So once we run our app and bring that up, it's going to bring up a phone or a tablet or a smart watch or whatever it is that you define. And once we bring that up again, this is the app that we're running. So let's say that we're going to do this for 3 years. We are going to borrow $10,000 for our vehicle, and we have an interest rate of 3. Once we come into here and again, click on that, then it brought it back to the electric car again, the title up here. It figured our monthly payment, and then again, it brought the graph in here. And it's kind of hard to see, but you can see that says 3-year loan. So that's where that if statement went in and figured that out. If we go back up here and start this again, let me run this. And again, it runs just like a regular phone. So it didn't start all those over. Let me, okay, so let's say this time we're going to go 6 years with those same things. And then we tap on that car payment button. Notice it says again, electric car financing, enter 3, 4, or 5 years. So that's where that else statement at the end of it told it had to be either a 3, 4, or 5 year period. So that kind of gives you an idea. Again, the whole goal of that is just to kind of begin to understand the logic and the statements that we use as programming in case you want to pursue a career or part of a job that has to do with that. So that is basically what we do in the user interface design class currently. In the Microsoft area, we are currently offering 3 courses for you to choose from. One of them is on the client side. That is going to be Windows 10 configuration. And the other 2 classes are in the network operating system using server. And so there's a first class and a second class where you can learn more details about that. And when we think about a client server environment, we know that in your school, you have networks of devices, and your clients are going to be your end devices, your laptops, your computers, and things like that that you have throughout the school. The server is going to be the network operating system that is managing all of those connected devices. So it's setting up users and policies and restrictions, devices and things like that as you work through there. So in this class, these classes actually, you get to learn more about the client end and the server end from a network administrator's standpoint. Now, in all 3 of those courses, we use a virtual labs environment that we work with through Microsoft official academic curriculum, and basically where you're given an access code where you will have an ebook that you'll go through and learn the theory. And then the labs are all virtualized. Like right now, I'm currently logged into one of the labs on the Windows 10 configuration side. And basically, when you log into those, you have virtual machines, again, which is an important concept for us to get very, very comfortable with in our field. So we know that when we think about this, again, you have different machines. So this is a Windows 10 machine. So if we come in and we look at that, we can see we have the normal Windows 10 things that we can go in and we can look at. We can also come up here and we can switch among machines. So in this particular lab, I have 1 client and I have 2 servers, network operating systems. So if I switch to DC1 as an example, that is going to be a operating system that's installed on a computer that is a network operating system instead of a client operating system. So it's going to have additional tools. Now I know that many of the things look just like my client, right? When I come into here, if I go to my File Explorer, it's going to look just like my client operating system. However, I have many additional tools that let me do the things that I need to in a server. One of those consoles is the server manager. So we'll learn as an example to come in from here. Again, we have all of these tools that we can go in. We can work with setting up and maintaining DNS, our domain name service, our DHCP, which is our dynamic host configuration protocol. We can come up and we can look at our Active Directory users and computers, where we'll learn to manage, as an example, the users that can communicate on your network. So when we come in and we look at those, again, we can define properties. We can add users to those as we go through there. So we learned, again, both levels, the client end, more an administration type skills, and then from the server, more managing and maintaining all those connected devices. In addition to the virtual environment that we have here, we work really hard to make sure that you can apply that in a real world environment. So we'll have reinforcement activities and things like that to make sure that not only can you do the theoretical things they're teaching you and the step-by-step instructions, but can you implement that on standalone equipment that you really work with? So even though we use the virtual environment to kind of train and begin to get those skills, we make sure that we reinforce those on regular equipment here in the classroom. We have computers everywhere and operating systems that we can work with both in a virtual environment on our systems and a standalone devices. The Guide to Parallel Operating System class provides an opportunity for you to learn a little bit about the Linux operating system. It also parallels it with more the command line utilities that we work with in Windows. So in this particular class, the students will have a virtual machine set up using Oracle VirtualBox, and we're using the CentOS distribution of Linux as far as the Linux side is concerned. And Linux is just an optional operating system that we can put on devices. It is very open source. It's not nearly proprietary and licensed as Windows is. It's also a very helpful skill for students that are going into the IT industry to know the basics of. So the CentOS distribution that we use, there's many of them out there. We use some other distributions on the computer repair side, but we'll basically learn a little bit about the GUI side of it. As you can see as we go through here, we'll learn about the different utilities. So again, if we go, there's system tools that we can work with. There's utilities, as an example, like the disk utility is very much like your disk management. So we'll learn to work with partitioning and things on drive. The real value of what we work with in this class, however, on both the Windows side and the command line side, is learning to use the command line interface. Now, we know command line interface was where we started a long, long time ago, and we know we prefer the GUI side, but as a technician, if something isn't working with the GUI, we need to know how to get in and fix it using that command line. We also know on the command line side, we can do many things much faster and much more efficient than what we can do in the GUI side. So we learn all kinds of commands that do that. We do that. We parallel that both with here and the Linux side. And then also we will learn, they'll have a virtual copy of the Windows side that we can come in and learn the command line utilities at a much greater level here than what we've done in some of the other areas. So that is our main goal of the Linux Guided Parallel Operating Systems, is an exposure to Linux and command line on both Windows and the Linux. And we'll also learn a little bit more about setting up the virtual machines and how we can manage the resources that are assigned to it and things like that, which is also a very helpful skills for students that are entering into the IT industry.